So I'd like everyone here to try and envision a scenario. So you and your friends are going to go out for dinner, maybe get some drinks, and one of your friends says that they want to invite someone that you don't know very well, a guy named Brian. So you feel a little bit weird about this, but you end up going out to dinner and you meet Brian, and he's a little bit off-putting, withdrawn, but you do eventually end up talking to Brian. And when you're talking to him, you realize that Brian only really wants to talk to you about one thing, and that thing is that the moon landing is fake. See, Brian is adamant, 100% sure that the moon landing is completely fake, and nothing that you can say to him will convince him otherwise. So you end up arguing with him for a little bit, and eventually Brian just completely dismisses you. He decides that you're a lost cause, and he starts ignoring you. So maybe you decide that next time you're going to tell your friend you don't want Brian to come out this time. So I want to pause here and just have everyone gauge to themselves, what are your feelings about Brian in this moment? Maybe you think he's a bit difficult, maybe even stupid or delusional. But the issue with this is if we think that about Brian, we have to think it about 20 million Americans, because about 6% of the US population believes that the moon landing is fake. So this isn't just a handful of delusional or stupid people. This is a significant portion of our population. So maybe we need to get to know Brian a little bit better to try and understand what's going on with him. So this is an example of the fundamental attribution error, assuming that it's just the personal characteristics of Brian that are making him believe about conspiracies, rather than what's actually going on with him. So Brian is in his early 20s. He's a bit socially withdrawn recently, and he recently went through a bit of a bad breakup. And in addition to this, he doesn't really like his job very much. He's been spending a lot of time online reading about conspiracy theories that he finds very, very compelling. But besides this, he just seems like a pretty normal, ordinary guy. So what could be going on with Brian that drives him to believe in conspiracies? Well, there are three main things that are driving Brian to believe in them due to his circumstances. The first are that Brian feels like he needs more control in his life due to his circumstances. The second is that Brian, like all of us, has a desire to belong. And finally, Brian wants to reduce uncertainty in his world and try and comprehend the environment around him better. So, as I mentioned previously, Brian went through a pretty rough breakup recently. His girlfriend cheated on him. It was very messy. I don't want to get into it, but trust me, it was really bad. And in addition to this, Brian works a 9-to-5 job that he absolutely hates with a boss that calls him incompetent every single day. So what this leads to is Brian feeling powerless and threatened on a day-to-day basis. What conspiracy theory belief can offer to Brian in this circumstance is to actually empower him by giving him an existential motive. So Brian has a goal now. It's to spread the truth. And the truth is that the moon landing is fake. So Brian feels like he's in a part of a bigger battle now. This isn't about him and his girlfriend or him and his boss. It's about him and NASA or him and the government and what they're hiding from the American people. So this makes Brian feel more important and more autonomous and ultimately boosts his self-esteem. So the issue with this, however, is that it isn't necessarily sustainable. You can only walk around believing something personally until it all comes crashing down around you. But luckily, Brian has 20 million other Americans that agree with him. So what this community of co-conspirators can actually do for Brian is they'll affirm his sense of reality. But in addition to this, they make him feel socially accepted, which is something he desperately needs right now considering how socially withdrawn he is. Another important function of this group, however, is that it allows Brian to easily identify an outgroup of people that have been causing him issues in life. So people like his girlfriend, his boss, the elite, the government, these are all easily dismissible people because they are ignorant and unaware. They don't believe in the moon landing being fake. So this is protective and again will increase Brian's perception of his own self-esteem. And finally, conspiracies can help Brian feel less uncertain about the world. So we as humans are always looking for causal explanations to the world around us. This is very natural. I'm sure everyone here occasionally is up late at night asking themselves big questions about the world, like why is there pain and suffering? And although when we take a step back and look at conspiracy theories, they seem sort of ridiculous because they're unfalsifiable. We don't often consider that they are a bulletproof idea of how to think about the world. So any question that Brian has about the world is easily answerable. If he asks himself, why is there pain and suffering in the world? The answer is the government's behind it. And this is the answer to every question that Brian has. This is very comforting and fills in the holes of his understanding of how the world works, making him feel more protected and safe. So this brings us to a really interesting place. Everything that I've mentioned so far has been beneficial in a net way for Brian. So why would we want to take this away from him? What could be detrimental about this? Well, it turns out that research has shown that in the long run, conspiracy theory belief comes crashing down around people eventually, and it has net negative effects on your self-esteem and feelings of safety. And in addition to this, high levels of conspiracy belief are very correlated with one's likelihood to remove themselves from politics and to increase the size of their carbon footprint, which in today's modern climate are the last two things that we need. So, we should try to help people who believe in conspiracy theories in different ways than the conspiracy theory can offer to actually satisfy their real needs. So conspiracy theorists are essentially kind of yelling a cry for help. This is their last place to turn to. And if we satisfy their fundamental needs by making them feel more in control of their life, being a social support to them, and making them get a more coherent understanding of their own world on a personal level, then that can help them take them out of this place. So if you know your own Brian and you have the opportunity to bring him out to dinner again, bring him out to dinner and ask him how he's doing. We can actually change people's minds and make them feel happier and healthier and better by satisfying these fundamental needs. Thank you.